in 10 minutes.
It's exclusive. They're going to take us inside.
It's the world's biggest house. The Queen of England calls it home. But despite over 50 guards, this guy broke in twice just to say hello.
I just said I've come to wish you good morning. And I was just quite startled by that.
Today, the royal tour inside Buckingham Palace.
Yes.
2, 1.
Zoom in, camera 1.
This Harvard-educated businessman gives millions to help the poor in third world countries. How does he make his money?
Mr. Harvey sells exploitation for a living.
He sells mail-order sex here in the States and uses the profits to stop overpopulation around the globe. Meet mild-mannered Phil Harvey, the undisputed king of porn.
Swift is in. Chicago, we're coming to you first.
Audio check, 1, 2.
Then to L.A.
The president is in Madrid negotiating world peace. So where is the nation's press? Palm Beach, Florida, for what promises to be a media circus.
Until you people go away.
Stand by.
Hello, I'm Bill O'Reilly. Thank you for watching Inside Edition on this very busy day. In addition to our headline stories, a little later on, our downtown Julie Brown will take us to Paris, where some of America's most beautiful women are center stage. But first up today, the biggest trial of the year is about to get underway. Jury selection in the rape trial of William Kennedy Smith begins tomorrow. And as you can imagine, Palm Beach is going crazy. Scott Rappaport is standing by in West Palm Beach. Scott.
Bill, behind me, you're getting just a glimpse of the enormous press corps that has come down here to Palm Beach to cover this trial. Make a note, the media feeding frenzy has officially begun, and reporters here are hungry. Palm Beach has traditionally been a seasonal town, catering to the very rich who come here to play each winter. But this year brings a different kind of season, open season, and the hunt for news.
Could you just tell us what happened?
Now, jury selection was supposed to begin tomorrow. However,
Step over, too. How far is it?
Meet the press.
I'm not going to make any comment about any of those matters.
When is
Why
Glenn
is that
coming to
essential
town?
Red and Julie, we are standing in what is dubbed the news media parking lot. And they're all here. AP wire services, the networks, the TV tabloids, you name it.
Oh, boy. But they're not all as happy as this guy. That's because with the delay in jury selection, there's not really much for them to do right now. And it's making some a little testy.
$10 to park.
All day.
I'll go
In and
park.
out all day.
I'll go park for free across the street.
There you go.
I don't get reimbursed for it.
Still, they are here in force. Reporters, writers, engineers, producers. Over 500 journalists from around the world are ultimately expected here to cover the Willie Smith trial. But for now, they are reduced to covering such monumental newsmakers as David Archibald.
T-shirt for you, ladies?
So how much are they?
They're $15.
David sets up shop each day at the Palm Beach County Courthouse, selling Teddy Kennedy T-shirts at $15 a pop. For this, David has become a media star, inundated with interviews. As David says, that's what it's come down to. And that's the way it is.
Until you people go away.
But judging from the looks of things, the media is not going anywhere anytime soon.
News media from around the world are camped out here.
Indeed, and more are on the way. Bill.
Scott, did any news happen down there today?
Bill, I think the most enticing news for journalists here was a statement made by Willie Smith's attorney yesterday. That statement saying Willie Smith will be here for jury selection and will take an active role in his defense. We shall see.
Okay, Scott, you'll continue covering the trial for us, and plenty more to come as we continue today. Downtown Julie Brown has the most outrageous fashions from Paris for us, and why is a man who sells hardcore sex movies being called a hero?
I wish he'd get out of the hardcore pornography industry, and I wish he'd get out of selling the exploitation of women for a living.
I have a right to make my living the way I want.
A fall from grace, the end of Jimmy Swaggart.
I have sinned against you, my Lord.
From his boyhood with cousin Jerry Lee Lewis, Jimmy Swaggart was a self-proclaimed man of God. Then, the sex scandals hit. His ministry is crumbling. His aides are deserting him. And his empire is falling in financial ruin. The end of Jimmy Swaggart. Also, going wild at Oktoberfest on Hard Copy.
Coming up next on Hard Copy on KVIA 7 Together.
Get set, our next report is about a man whose fortune is based on the wages of sin, but what he does with his money has some praising him. Nancy Glass is here with the story. Nancy.
Phil Harvey would be a very wealthy man if he didn't give most of his money away. Now, if that's all I told you, you'd probably say, what a terrific guy. But what stops people short is that Phil Harvey makes his money as a sophisticated pornographer. There are an estimated 1 billion people on Earth who have no food, no shelter, no way to keep their children alive. After spending 5 years in India working for CARE, the answer for Phil Harvey is family planning. Over the years, he has given $6 million, almost everything he has earned, towards that end. He also runs an organization which raises an estimated $20 million a year. He is generous, dedicated, and you won't believe where the money comes from.
He's one of the largest distributors of mail-order hardcore pornography in the United States. Very simply, in our opinion, Mr. Harvey sells exploitation for a living.
I have a right to make my living the way I want.
Phil Harvey has emerged as a Robin Hood of sorts. He takes money from those who can afford his products and gives his portion of the profits to those in need. What complicates the situation is that he does indeed sell sexually related items, but Phil Harvey makes no apologies for how he makes his money.
Adam and Eve sells a whole variety of adult products, adult videos, magazines, as well as condoms, vibrators, lubricants, oils, gels, creams, and so on.
As you listen to Phil Harvey reel off that list, what strikes you is the contrast between the man and the products he sells. There are no gold chains, no playmates lounging around the office. He prefers hush puppies to Italian loafers. You're a Harvard graduate. You don't exactly have the kind of image that people would associate with this business.
Any business that has sexual content, everyone tends to assume that it's somehow sleazy, and it just isn't so.
Do you see any moral conflicts here? Any moral conflicts between selling pornography and giving that money to developing countries for population control?
There's no connection between the sexual content of products sold by Adam and Eve and how one may use the funds derived from that business for philanthropic work.
But you could sell ties.
Yes, but why? I mean, why would there be less of a moral issue in selling ties? We sell a product that is essentially benign.
It's not my place to ascribe to Mr. Harvey either his character or his motives. I wish he'd get out of the hardcore pornography industry.
Dean Kaplan of the National Coalition Against Pornography is not moved by what Harvey does with his money. His catalogs certainly are explicit. We can't show you more than this. But Harvey claims that his products are approved by a panel of sex therapists and clinical psychologists. By the way, the State Department says he's the only person in America who has been able to run this type of family planning project so successfully. But the Justice Department has been trying to prosecute him on obscenity charges for years. Some people would say it's a clean cover on what is basically a dirty business.
The business is anything but dirty. The business has always been open, honest, forthright.
He was indicted on 9 counts of disseminating obscenity. It took the jury 5 minutes to acquit him. Still, his troubles aren't over. He's now being prosecuted on obscenity charges in the state of Utah. But Phil Harvey says he feels confident in both his legal and moral stand, even if some people believe he simply exploits one group of people to help another. Now, you may wonder how the State Department feels about Phil Harvey. Well, we spoke with the agency that benefits from his work, and surprisingly, they had no idea what he did for a living. Bill?
I don't know if it's surprising based on Washington bureaucracy, but interesting story, Nancy. Thank you. Coming next, an ordinary guy breaks into the Queen of England's bedroom not once, but twice. How did he do it? And Julie Brown takes us to Paris.
All the top models are hitting the runway, and the top designers want to show you their latest spring fantasies.
Travel arranged through Continental Airlines. One airline can make a difference. What's the difference? A first-class seat for the price of a full coach fare. That's the difference on Continental.
On Friday, an expert says hundreds of shark attacks are being kept secret. We are about to take you inside Buckingham Palace. In fact, that's the name of a new book by our royal correspondent, Andrew Morton. And there's a lot going on with the royal family these days, including a guy who keeps breaking into the Queen's bedroom while she's there. Here's Andrew's report.
It's the world's most prestigious address. It's the home and headquarters of the British royal family. Prince Charles refers to it as the house, and Fergie calls it the best hotel in London.
Every year, millions of tourists clamour outside the wrought iron gates of Buckingham Palace for a glimpse of the Queen, Princess Di or Fergie. But it's only when the Queen's flag is flying that she's at home, and you won't get past the guards without a royal invitation.
Only a handful of privileged subjects ever get inside, and only servants are allowed into the Queen's private quarters. And yet there was one man who invited himself into the Queen's bedroom. For the very first time, Michael Fagan tells how he broke into Buckingham Palace, not once, but twice. The first time without anyone even noticing.
Over the fence, up the walls of the palace, climbed right up to the top there, in through the maid's window, disturbed the maid, found my way into Prince Charles's secretary's office, drunk a bottle of wine, and then left rapidly.
Several weeks later, Fagan, an unemployed father of 6, made another visit to the palace, this time desperate to see the Queen in person and pour out all his troubles. At dawn, Fagan used the same route into the palace, then through the stamp room, along the picture gallery, past the corgi room, and stumbled across the Queen's bedroom.
It was in darkness, walked to the window, drew back the curtain. The Queen started up, asked what I was doing there.
What was
I said good morning.
Words?
What are you doing here? Those were her exact words. I just said, I've come to wish you good morning. And she was quite startled by that. Jumped out of her bed. Run across the floor and out the door.
Michael Fagan had exposed just how inadequate palace security was. According to Jeff Edwards, police reporter for the People newspaper, the Queen these days is never left unguarded.
She even has to go to bed now with an armed policeman sitting on a chair outside her door.
This year alone, $90 million was spent on high-tech security, and not just to protect the royal family, but also their priceless treasures. Historian Philip Hall is an expert on royal wealth.
Her jewels and her private investments, and exactly how much they are worth, nobody knows. It's a very well-kept secret, but hundreds of millions of dollars, I think, would be the starting point.
While we may think the richest woman in the world would decorate her palace in a style fit for a queen, Her Majesty is a homebody at heart. She prefers her surroundings comfortable and cosy, yet elegant, like this drawing room, where she often receives guests, and this bedroom where VIPs and royalty sleep. This is the Queen's private sitting room, and this is the palace music room. Unlike the President, the royal family keeps anything and everything they want. Below the palace is an Aladdin's cave of wealth, secret vaults overflowing with riches.
If one put all the royal collection, all the works of art, into a museum, it would really only be bettered by a handful of museums in the world.
And there are some things that even the Queen doesn't know are happening in her own home. Last week, she was shocked by news of drug deals from inside the palace. It's alleged that the daughter of a trusted servant was ferrying cocaine past palace police in her baby's stroller. A London newspaper, the Daily Mirror, set up a cocaine deal with the alleged drug dealer. But even with this videotape evidence, the police couldn't set foot on Her Majesty's property to make an arrest.
They had to wait to have an invitation, a royal invitation, to go in and take her into custody.
It's little wonder the Queen is suspicious of everyone and surrounds herself with her own family. The Queen's cousin, Lady Elizabeth Anson, helps organise palace parties. The Queen always chooses the menu, usually simple food, and Lady Elizabeth often advises on the rest. For a banquet, butlers spend 3 days setting the table. Every knife, fork and spoon is precisely 2 inches from the edge. And if you do get an invitation to dinner and are overwhelmed by what's in front of you, just follow the Queen.
We take the lead from the Queen.
And there are royal rules about conversation. As President Reagan learned, the Queen speaks to her neighbour on the right before the main course and her neighbour on the left until dessert. For most people, a spot in the crowd outside the royal fortress, Buckingham Palace, is as close as they will ever get. And today, as the Queen left home for Africa, even Michael Fagan was there with all the other tourists, hoping for a glimpse of Her Majesty.
Did she recognise you?
I think she did, actually, yeah.
Gave you a little wave.
No, just eye contact, just eye contact.
A little wave. Incredibly, Michael Fagan has not been convicted of anything. 200 years ago, he would have gotten to know the Tower of London quite well. And Inside Edition will be right back with some of the most beautiful women in the world showing off in Paris. Downtown Julie Brown in Paris with the latest in high fashion in a moment. But first, here's what's upcoming on Inside Edition.
This little girl sells herself to tourists.
I'm afraid, but I need the money.
Officials look the other way, and the countless victims are too small to matter.
I just go to the hotel where they are, and we have sex.
Bill O'Reilly takes you inside a city where sex is easy and children are cheap.
If I wanted to take her, I could.
That's tomorrow, a compelling story, and finally today. Downtown Julie Brown is just back from downtown Paris, where the fashion world is agog over the latest trends for women. Here's Julie's report.
All the top models are hitting the runway, and the top designers want to show you their latest spring fantasies.
The style for spring seems to be a bit undefined, a bit unfocused, and maybe the best way to describe it is not to. As for the critics, they've been having a fashion fit. The big monster debate was, per usual, the hemline. Was it going up or was it coming down?
I thought it was not the right thing to think about length, but to think about being thin, straight line, vertical line. And that is the story.
Karl Lagerfeld, one of the best in the industry, is responsible for two lines this year, his own and Chanel. There were female models, male models, heavy models, even animal models. French creator Terry Mugler pulled out all the stops. He even had Lip Syncer, the famous performing transvestite, slink out in a few of his creations. Mugler's show has always been one of the most exciting. This season, he lassoed the audience with some wild and crazy Western styles. And the Bear As You Dare theme was big on his runway. I know what you're thinking. Who would wear this stuff? Well, she's a glamour queen in her own right. Yep, Ivana. It's been 15 years since this former model hit the catwalk.
Terry can be very sophisticated, or he can go really Hollywood, and he can go crazy, or sometimes combination of both.
Another hot designer, very electrifying and maybe a bit too risque for most of you, is Jean-Paul Gaultier. He's the one responsible for most of Madonna's clothing.
So here's the man that dares to be different, the one and only Jean-Paul Gaultier, and boy, was it different.
You think it was?
I thought it was just, where did that come from?
From there.
Vivienne Westwood is referred to in the business as the Queen of Punk. This year, she pumped out a line that couldn't be topped, mixing far out and funky with a touch of old-world elegance. Oh, in case you're wondering, they're back. Platforms.
To produce a show like this, it not only takes months of preparation, but it costs a lot of money. $150,000 or thereabouts, and a third of that goes straight to the models.
Paris is the sort of, it makes you feel like old school fashion. I think that design is the most incredible here. I think everybody watches what's done here.
And so it was. All eyes were on Paris. And why not? Paris is the capital of all fashion. So what if the fashions were a little scattered? Be like the designers, daring and different. Take a walk on the wild side and risk it. And you know me, I'm always risking it. Do you like it, Bill?
What is it, Julie? What exactly is it?
What is it? This is one of the latest recreations from Vivienne Westwood that you saw up there. Sort of like a touch of elegance to a little bit of funkiness.
Do women wear this outside? I mean, do you go outside in this?
Real women wear it outside.
No, but
yes.
you could wear it to a party or something?
Yes, I'd go to the A&P store shopping.
Yeah, I bet you would, Julie. We see people like that all the time in the A&P. How much do those models make an hour on the runway?
Well, now the good thing about the models, they're taking a little bit more control. I mean, the top models make $5,000 to $10,000 each show, and they can do about 10 shows, maybe, while they're there in a week.
Really?
So they're making a lot of money.
Now, do you get to keep this outfit?
I bought it.
Oh, you bought it. Okay, that's interesting. How much did this cost?
Well, you know, if you want to be different, then it costs you a little bit more than the average Joe kind of clothing.
And you don't want to be different, no?
No, this is normal for me.
This is right. This is what we believe.
I bought you something back, but I didn't think you'd want to wear it today, so I thought we'd try it on later.
Next time.
Okay.
Julie Brown, thank you for that
Thank
report. In the A&P, yes, indeed. And that's it for us today. Thanks again for watching Inside Edition. I'm Bill O'Reilly. Hope to see you again tomorrow.